Born Edward Theodore Gein on August 27, 1906, in La Crosse, Wisconsin. His parents were, by all accounts, a mismatched pair for such a vulnerable young boy. His father, George, was an alcoholic, which meant that the boy was legally watched over by his mother, Augusta. Augusta, meanwhile, was a complete religious fanatic. Though Ed grew up alongside his older brother, Henry, no amount of sibling companionship could sway the tides of an overly puritanical matriarch who routinely mocked and shamed her children. Augusta ruled the home with an iron fist, ideologically founded by her stern, conservative outlook on life. She regularly preached about sin, carnal desire, and lust to her two young boys while their father nodded off in a booze-induced trance. Augusta relocated the Gein family to Plainfield in 1915. Gein was only 9 when they moved onto the desolate farmland, and he rarely left for any reason besides school. Though Gein had likely been shaped and molded in terms of his reprehensible behavior, an unnatural rejection of normal urges, his mental health issues would truly take shape until both his parents died in 1940. When Ed was 34 years old and still lived at home, his father died. Left alone with his mother, Gein and his brothers were attempting to pick up the slack left by their admittedly complacent father after he had passed away. The two brothers worked a variety of odd jobs to make ends meet and support their mother, lest her wrath be turned against them. In 1944, however, a supposed accident shrank the Gein family even further. Gein and Henry were burning brush on the family farm, and the blaze apparently grew to uncontrollable proportions, ultimately leaving Henry dead. It was only after Gein's future crimes were discovered by the law and the world at large that true crime observation. Regardless of how Henry's death happened, Gein now had his mother to himself. The Gein household was essentially comprised of an aging puritanical mother who shamed her adult son about the dangers of carnal desires, and a grown man whose fears, anxieties, and devotions forced him to stay and endure this environment. This aspect of Gein's disturbed persona was most likely notably explored in Alfred Hitchcock's Psycho. Gein never left the house for social gatherings, nor dated anyone. He was entirely devoted to his mother and tending to her every concern. Only 1 year later, however, Augusta Gein died. This is what Ed Gein's legacy as one of the most psychologically unhinged, dangerous, and macabre serial killers of the 20th century began in earnest. The murders begin. Living alone in the sizable house once inhabited by his parents and older brother, Ed Gein started to go off the rails. He kept his mother's room spotless and untouched, presumably in an effort to repress the fact that she had died. The rest of the house, meanwhile, was utterly neglected. Everywhere trash piled up, piles of household items, furniture, and nondescript items collected dust and grew from small piles into undeniable mounds. At the same time, Gein fostered a disconcerting curiosity of anatomy, which initially seeded by amassing numerous books on the subject. Coincidentally, this stage of Gein's psychological development and quality of life and environment occurred at the same time that several Plainfield residents went missing. Numerous people had simply vanished without a trace. One of these was Mary Hogan, who owned the Pine Grove Tavern, one of the only establishments Ed Gein regularly visited. Inside Ed Gein's house, Bernice Warden was reported missing on November 16, 1957. The Plainfield hardware store where she had worked in was empty. The cash register was gone, and there was a trail of blood leading all the way out the back door. The woman's son, Frank Warden, was a deputy sheriff, and he was immediately suspicious of the recluse Gein. He focused much of his investigation exclusively on Gein, who was quickly located and apprehended at a neighbor's house. The killer's camouflage and undetected bloodlust had finally come to close when the authorities who were dispatched to Gein's home that night discovered the stark, undeniable evidence they likely never thought they'd encounter. In addition to Warden's decapitated corpse, which had also been gutted like a captured game and hung from the ceiling, officers found various organs in jars and skulls turned into makeshift soup bowls. Other things found in Ed Gein's house included a trash can and several chairs upholstered in human skin, a belt, and a corset of severed nipples and human skulls made into bowls. Gein admitted to killing Warden, as well as Mary Hogan, 3 years earlier during initial questioning. Gein also confessed to grave robbing, from which he used several corpses for some of his most grotesque crimes. Gein transported corpses back to his house so that he could express his anatomical curiosity. As the Plainfield Police Department had a backlog of unsolved murders and disappearances on their plate, authorities tried their hardest to pin a few of these on Gein. In the end, they were unsuccessful, and it is uncertain whether Gein simply did not want to admit to things he hadn't done them, or if he didn't want to give them the pleasure of aiding them in their work. Clearly convinced that the unprecedented crimes of Ed Gein could be viewed as a result of mental health issues, his lawyer, William Belter, entered a not guilty plea by reason of insanity in January of 1958. Gein was unfit to stand trial and was committed to Central State Hospital. 10 years after Gein was committed to Central State Hospital, he was found to be fit for trial. That November, he was found guilty of murder of Bernice Warden. However, since Gein was also found insane during the initial trial, the killer once again committed to Central State Hospital. In 1974, Gein submitted his first attempt for release. Due to dangers he posed to others, this was naturally rejected. Gein seemed to keep a low profile and stayed to himself while institutionalized. Only when his health had begun to seriously deteriorate towards the late 1970s did Gein leave Central State Hospital. He was transferred to the Mendota Mental Health Institute. It was here that he died of cancer and respiratory illness on July 26, 1984. Beyond the